We will commence this governing body meeting today with apologies. We've got a couple of apologies for Councillor Arth, Councillor Linda, Councillor Alf and Christine for lateness. Move that seconder, please.
Happy to second.
Oh, Wayne, good on you. Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Pass, thank you. Declarations of interest, none of those. Confirmation of minutes. I move that the ordinary minutes of its meeting held on Thursday, 17th of December 2015, including the confidential section, be a true and correct record. Move that seconder. Councillor Cow. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Passed. No acknowledgements and achievements this time. Petitions, none. Public input, none. Local board, no. Extraordinary business, no. Notice motions, no. Now we've got the recommendations here, councillors, and we're going to have a response, first of all, from Maddie. You'll start.
That's not
Working. Is it plugged in? It's not going red, so it might not be plugged in, Matthew, because it's not going red.
Thank you, Your Worship, councillors. So a good workshop yesterday, and so staff have been busy thinking about some of the feedback received yesterday. So we've tabled just a little one-pager there titled Annual Plan Responses to GB Workshop. So I just thought take a couple of moments just to make sure everyone's clear on what the staff actions look like following direction yesterday. So the first primary change there is that we will extend the consultation period by a couple of weeks. So that would take it through to the 24th of March, just before Easter. What that will enable is just about 4 weeks between when we expect householders to receive the summary document in their letterboxes and the time they have to think about their interest in responding to the questions. So we will and can, or we can and will push that out. Squeezes things up a little bit for us at the back end, but we're comfortable we'll be able to deal with that. The second item there, clearly yesterday, a fair bit of interest, understandably, in that summary document itself, while your resolutions today are really focused on the adoption of the consultation document. Plenty of focus on the document that goes out to householders. So, look, our timelines are compressed here, but we will move quickly today and get out to you this afternoon a draft copy of that summary document. We will need feedback from you by Monday, so that gives you a couple of days towards the end of this week and the weekend if you're so inclined to have a look at that and provide your feedback through to Nathan in the comms department. And I think we've just probably captured there that we need to work within those timelines to give enough editorials, sub-editing kind of process time next week to get that thing off to the printers by the end of next week. So we will go there and get the summary document out and about on the email for feedback. The other item there too, which had a little bit of conversation yesterday, is we can and will, but again you'll need to get cracking and be busy, give ward councillors the ability for around 150 words messaging that can be part of that summary document. We intend, or the team intend, to reaching out to your respective CSAs this afternoon to test interest and help that process along. But again, I would just encourage you to understand we would need that back in by Monday.
Well done, Matty.
And look, finally, just a wee table there. Staff have done their level best to pick up other items of feedback. The bulk of that was of an editorial nature. I'd like to think we've captured most of that and addressed some of those concerns, and they're listed there.
Very good. Okay. Right, councillors. Now, what I think, so we've got the recommendations there basically as a group. So having heard from the officers and having had a good chance to have some discussion yesterday, is there any comment, query, concerns that people would like to express now, or would we be able to basically get this out to the community in reasonable pace and get the matter moving?
Yep.
Councillor Denise?
Thank you. I've thought about this overnight and have very much kept in mind the truncated timeline and how difficult it is and will be to fit everything in. And I think the extension to the 24th of March is fantastic and just what was required. But I'll have a hard time, and I really do, this is a quandary for me, I have a hard time supporting this. And I've thought to myself, is this about wordsmithing? Is this about getting too bogged down in the detail? But without seeing what's going into letterboxes, for me, that's quite important, and especially reading the response to our workshop yesterday where it says that the text for the ITL section is still being worked on. I think how that's phrased and how that is transmitted, I understand that the actual submission form, the form that people submit is the same, whether it's in the summary document or whether it's in the consultation or the supporting information. But that summary document is of importance to me. And so perhaps this would have been resolved a little if we'd kept our workshop back on Thursday, which we couldn't have because of protesters. And we might have had a few more days to work this over. So I'm just going to table my concern and hear how comments are further made this morning. But as it stands, for me, that's of importance, that summary document. And I also note here that in the recommendations, it's not entirely clear who approves the summary document, because in E, correct me if I'm wrong, but the delegated responsibility for editing the consultation document and the supporting information and the draft Māori Authority plan is to those listed, the Mayor, the Chair and CFO. So the summary document, the thing that goes out to every ratepayer's letterbox, who has oversight over that?
Okay, we'll give that one some thought. I mean, what Maddie is indicating is that it will go out tonight as a draft, and we're wanting to get people's views back in. If the Chamber is significantly concerned about that and wants to see an appropriate marriage between that and the recommendations and the consultation document, then it might well be that we could put a small working party together. You know, I mean, there's ways and means of actually addressing this, but I wouldn't want to see it as anything like a deal breaker. We've got to get something out there, and it needs to. You're right. I mean, you could wordsmith this till the cows come home. It's never going to be perfect.
Yep.
It's not perfect to my eyes.
That's not my intention, Mr. Mayor. It's just simply. You know, there'd be a couple of sections, one on the ITL,
Yep.
that,
Well,
I mean, we've already talked about changing something around to what?
Okay, so one of the points that I made, and perhaps we'll just reflect on this a little bit as the discussion goes along, is that we could bring together a cross-chamber team to finalise the wording with that, work with Maddie and the team. How about that? That I think might be a reasonably sensible way of getting through it, ensuring we continue on with pace. Okay, now I've got Councillor John Watson.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I'd just like to start off by commending Matthew and Aaron and the team for trying to strike this balance between an educative function, which I think we all realise needs to happen, actually explain to people what things mean, and to do that in a straightforward language, while at the same time catching all the nuances and variations of what some of these complicated mechanisms mean. And I think it especially goes to those two big areas we're concentrating on, the UAGC and interim transport levy, and in particular with the UAGC, you know, the notion that there is no free lunch here. If some people get a reduction, other people pay more, and that in many instances the sums that are involved aren't particularly significant. You know, so to kind of suggest that, you know, that's a cure-all in some respects is belied by the figures, as is the notion that, you know, it's one big part of Auckland gaining at the other parts of Auckland's expense, where in reality that is reflected within individual wards. So while Forest Hill might gain on the North Shore, Birkdale and Beach Haven might be the loser, and so forth and so on through each ward. So I commend the team for trying to strike that balance between education and simplicity. And the same goes for the interim transport levy there. Again, the sums aren't great, but I think Councillor Clow made the very good point during the workshop that for our purposes, both as councillors and as a council, people look at the headline figure of the percentage, and if the council is looking to in some way win people over or come across as listening to their responses, clearly the percentage that lines up with the rates increases is absolutely crucial to that. I'm glad to see that the suggestion taken on board about the any other feedback, because as much as we are concentrating on these main issues, there are other issues that I know people feel very strongly about since the long-term plan that have really only become evident in the, since that plan went through. And the one I think of particularly driving around all parts of Auckland is the effect of the policy to do with spraying, chemical spraying in the parks. Leave out any health concerns, just the visual aesthetic, in my view, is absolutely appalling. No matter where you go to in Auckland, you have these beautiful manicured sports fields, and at the sides we have the, well, I think the Ho Chi Minh Trail would have been sprayed less than many of our fields and parks. You go up to some of the parks, it's up at the beautiful Matheson Bay, a more beautiful place you couldn't find. Around every single little bollard, and there must have been about 30 bollards, they've sprayed around it. The historic plaque commemorating the settlers who landed there, that's all sprayed round. The picnic table where people sit down for their lunch is all sprayed. So I think issues like that, it makes us look not very good. It looks like, you know, something you'd see in some third world city, not the most livable city, maybe the world's most chemical city, but I'm hoping people pick up on that and put some pressure on us to actually do something about it, because I think it's a terrible look aesthetically, if no other reason, and there are plenty of other good reasons for Auckland. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor John. Perhaps we'll use your impassioned plea on the matter of weed spraying to remind everyone we're not here debating the issues today. We're trying to get out a consultation document.
Yes, I know. Just referring to any other feedback.
Yeah, look, I know that you would find a way through those concerns that I was expressing there, Councillor John. So let's just keep it focused on it. Otherwise, we'll be here till the cows come home. Councillor Cal.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I just want to make a comment in regards to, look, none of it's been said in regards to the extension of the consultation process, and Matt and Aaron and the team, good on you guys. Look, I've sat on this table for the last 5 years. Prior to that, you know, I've been through a number of annual plan processes. This is no different. No different, and I don't think whatever we do, we'll get it right. But you know, there's an opportunity here, as I was just saying to my colleague to the left, that you know, they can go online and gather other information that is required. And I'm sure as we go through the process, that they'll note on their return anything else that they have concerns with, that will be taken on board. I am a little bit concerned about another working party. We struggle now to get people to turn up to workshops, so good on you. But you know, that aside, we need to get it out there. We need to hear from the people of Auckland, and we need to move forward.
Councillor Cowell, I'm mindful of the fact that we don't over-bureaucratise our political structure, but if there are people who actually want to have a reasonable final say in helping Maddie to conclude this document, why not? And if they indicate they would like to be part of a working team, and there's 3 or 4 of them in there, then you know there's no harm there, and it's only for a week. Councillor Penny W.
Yes, thank you. Very happy with the extended consultation, and I believe I've been talking to Andrew Duncan, and you are going to change some of the discussion about the bids, because I am really concerned that, and I do question actually, Mr. Mayor, why that has to go out for consultation. I mean, the bids are self-contained. They actually gather money from the members of that bid.
That's right.
It should be paid 100% back to the bid. So, and I know that it's been explained to me that because we are rating, we have to do it, but particularly in the northwest and in the Warkworth area, there are some real concerns about the way this is being handled. And a document going out saying this is how much money we're going to collect when that vote hasn't even been taken on yet is a bit of a concern for me. And I mean, I'm supportive of bids, I always have been, but they have to be bottom up, not top down. And by having it in this document the way it is, it looks as if it's a foregone conclusion and we're going to do it. Now, I know that in the text, Andrew's put proposed, and I think they're going to change on page 34 where it says walk with new to a proposed, but it still will go out and people will see it and wonder why they're being rated when they haven't made that decision. I'm just saying that.
It's a classic. It's like us with our 10-year plan,
I know.
you know, telling the market what exactly we're going to spend on any project that they're going to contract us to. Nuts. But Aaron or Maddie?
Yeah, and just on that, with regards rates, anything that touches on rates really is hits the threshold of needing to be consulted on. It's our view that it has to be in the document to enable you to make a decision later on whether you proceed with it or not. If it's not in the document, then you can't then make that decision later on. So it's purely there as a function to allow the council to make that decision later on once all the process of working through the issues of establishing the bid or not have been decided, and then the council can make that decision.
So further to that, thank you for that explanation. However, it goes into a document to be consulted on, but the only people that are making the decision on whether or not we have a bid and whether or not how much it's going to be in the bid are the people who are involved in the bid. So by putting it in a document like this, does this mean that anybody from anywhere in Auckland can say, well, actually, we don't think that's a good idea, we need to put it up, or otherwise? Well, that's my concern about it.
Yeah, isn't it around the wording? I mean, if on the basis it's got to be there, it's making it as clear as possible that this is purely a proposal at this stage.
But the point I'm trying to make, Mr. Mayor, is that no one else but the members of that bid decide on whether or not it's a rate or a membership fee, whether it's a flat fee. No one else decides that. So we have it in a document that's going to go out for public consultation. So somebody in Franklin could write in and say, well, actually, I think in Warkworth and in the Northwest we should be rating them X number. Well, why ask?
Want us to respond? I think we are caught up in bureaucracy here, and I'm not actually sure we can do a hell of a lot about it. So I think we can do our best with the words and get the words as appropriate as we can so it's very clear. But just talking very quickly with the team here, including legal, I'm not sure that we could carve out that part of the consultation and only direct it to the concerned parties, while appreciating that that would seem to be the logical thing to do. We can have a look at it, so we can look at whether that option sits there, but the initial thinking is it doesn't. But we can do our best with the wording. I mean, it's tricky, you know, your powers to strike rates are significant, they're enshrined in legislation, there's a certain statutory process that must accompany every rate that you strike, and we're caught in that.
Okay, Councillor Bill.
Well, thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy that the consultation period's been stretched out. That was my only concern. I'd just like to make an acknowledgement to the waste minimisation team and to Chairman Andy Baker for the work they did around the recycling work for the rural parts of Franklin. 3 days notice was given by Enviro Waste that the facility operated out of Pukekohe was going to shut. The community was obviously displeased. This was not a council-run facility, it's a private-run facility. And Ian Stupple and Andy Baker worked together to come up with some interim solutions and then to come up with a permanent solution, bringing forward the curbside recycling to each rural household. And it's a good positive, and it shows what our staff and elected members can do when they work collaboratively. So just a note of thanks to Andy and to Ian. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Very good. Get that one, Andy? Nice. Right, Councillor Wayne.
Sure. Just got a question around presentation, and I know I've raised it with you before, and it goes to the UAGC, and that's having a presentation that's in graphical form, so that somebody can locate the value of their house on a graph and they can see what the UAGC is under, or effectively what the rates are under different options. It makes it very simple for people to look at. Most people can understand graphs. I understand the simplicity of this approach having particular values of houses. The other thing, though, it does show quite graphically is the overall impact, because some of the lines are pretty flat. So I just put that out there, Mr Mayor. It's a way of demonstrating what the differences of the UAGC quite pictorially. You can also do the same thing around the interim transport levy, for example, and if you wanted to go a step further, you can actually combine everything in a graphical format so that people can understand what the relationship is between different options. So I just tossed that in there. I do think that we need to up our game in that area. A couple of other things. Pleased with the extension of time. That's great. Just like to add on to the comment that Councillor Watson made around the sprays. We've got a policy that was all around the minimisation of sprays, and in actual fact, in implementation, we're maximising it. So it's not just something that's aesthetic, it's a significant increase on the ground that I'd suggest is of concern to a number of people. They weren't aware of it to this extent during the long-term plan process, and I think we need to take account of them through this annual plan process.
Thank you. Councillor Camp.
Oh, thank you, Mr Chair, Mr Mayor. I just want to table a couple of things, and like Councillor Crum, I have some concerns about not really getting a good sight of the summary consultation document, given that's how most of our ratepayers will see it in their letterbox, but at least we're seeing the text. And for me, going on the premise of we're only really consulting on the changes to the LTP, the two big things here are around rating policy with the potential to lift the UAGC and the business interim transport levy. The UAGC, I know it's one of your favourite topics, Mr Mayor, but I know you also said you're going to give us a little bit of leniency last night. It's important to see there that for $1 million properties, it's a potential relief of $111 if you go from a $397 UAGC to a $650 UAGC. So it's not huge relief, but it certainly sends a signal to a lot of those people that have borne the brunt of, in some areas like mine, the brunt of compounding rates increases of up to 10% per annum. And let's not forget that we've now got 59, according to quotable value and Core Logic and others, we've now got $59 million suburbs. So gone are the days when we used to argue about a low UAGC for $1 million properties benefiting
So,
the
Councillor
rich.
Cam, I know you're going to talk about what exactly we're here to talk about.
So on the document, Mr Mayor, I'm very pleased that that's well demonstrated, well represented, well explained, with help from the University of Auckland. It's also important to see there on that page 20 of the document that even if your CV hasn't caught up with market value and you're sitting on $750,000, that you're still in for some relief of, say, $20 on a higher UAGC. So that's a long time coming. $59 million suburbs in Auckland, representing 37.5% of our 157 areas that have more than 500 houses. There's 2 suburbs now in Waiheke that have got $1 million suburbs. So gone are the days where this is an issue for Remuera. If you have a look on QV's, those 59 suburbs are right on the eastern flank from north, from Rodney, right through and central eastern flank of the entire region. And so I believe that the debate around UAGC is timely, and the implementation of a lower UAGC, higher UA, of a better UAGC would be much more conducive to what we're trying to achieve.
And the point you would like to make,
The point I'd like to make there is for people to have a look at the UAGC, because it was lost in the LTP debate around transport, and thank you for affording me the time to explain the winners out of that, Mr Mayor. The second point I'd like to make is around the business transport levy. And I believe that that time has also come for debate, but the questionnaire certainly points to business. It will lead people to say business should pay for more, and it will lead also for, I believe, people to look at the sliding scale. But businesses need themselves, even though this is kind of buried under the interim transport levy section, businesses need to have a good look at them, good look at this, because as we know, on average, this could be taking business rates to over 4%. We're marketing it as 2.5%, but if this happens, it'll take it to over 4% on average. And noting that a lot of little businesses will get discounts, the average for many will be much higher than that. And I want to point to, again, a $1.5 million CV business, and there'll be plenty of them, and I've pointed to the local cafes around the place that are sitting on a $1.5 million CV. Their business interim transport levy will go up 145% from $183 to $450 if we go for option 3.
So
$10 million, they'll go for $3,000.
Councillor Cam, you happy with the way the document presents this?
I'm happy with how it's presented, but I just wanted to put some sunlight on it, Mr Mayor, because it is buried under the interim transport levy, page 24, and businesses, particularly smaller businesses, that might be sitting on a cafe or a dairy or a small premise with a relatively high 1.5 million, they're up for 145% increase. And so not only do we want to hear from New Zealand Steel and some of the big businesses, but we want to really hear from those businesses that are sitting on $1.5 million properties and $10 million properties that are up for a significant increase that will take their business rates overall well beyond 4% increases for 16-17. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Sir John.
Thank you, Your Worship. With all this documentation going out to people, I just wonder how much we're going to take notice of it when it comes back. And we're going to give the people a fair go, because there's no point having meet and greet people and we don't actually do anything about it. I'd also like to wonder when we're getting a train from Franklin, Pukekohe to Auckland, a fast train, because that would eliminate half the traffic at Papakura.
Okay, so you obviously didn't enjoy your ride in this morning, Sir John.
I thought it was pretty good for a while. But
Well, I really do encourage you to jump on at Pukekohe Papakura, Sir John. A bit like Cal over there.
Don't start me.
It's-
Talk about consultation.
Yeah, so John, of course we go through a long process once we get the feedback in, and we're a part of the feedback anyhow because we go to the Have You Say events. So plenty of opportunity to actually take on board what people have to say and then make our decision accordingly.
Yeah, but are we actually going to do anything about it?
Well, every single, you and I have been a part of probably about 23, 24 annual plans. My recollection is every single one of those, we either change them to a lesser or greater degree. There's always changes.
Hope so.
Thanks, Sir John. Councillor Cathy.
Oh, thanks. Can you just, I've got a couple of questions I didn't ask at the workshop, I just remembered about them. Can you just remind me who the key stakeholders are that we're going to have have your say meeting with? We went into that in some detail the last time to make sure there was fair representation.
Look, we don't have the list, it's maintained and there's no secrecy there. We're happy just to share it out amongst councillors.
I think the last time there was just from me, it was to make sure that the unions were represented as a key stakeholder in Auckland.
Well, I'm happy in the same spirit as the summary document. I don't see any reason why we don't share with council as the key stakeholder list, and we'll take any thoughts that people have.
Thank you. The second was just to ask about accessibility of the documents for people with disabilities who can't read or who can't see, who can't hear.
Yeah, I'm not 100% across it, but I believe there is a version being done for...
Right, I actually want a clear answer to that,
Yep.
and if we can't get it straight away...
The summary, so the March edition of the Our Auckland will be converted into a New Zealand Sign Language video. The summary of the March edition, Our Auckland, will be made into a sign language video.
Good.
Large print and accessibility for people with poor sight.
We can do large print. In terms of HTML version, it would take a couple of weeks.
I don't understand what will take a couple of weeks.
To convert the PDF version into an HTML
I'm not asking how long it
version.
takes, I'm asking if you are making it fully accessible.
No, we are making it on PDF.
This has been an issue over many consultations from our disabled community that they want to go online and increase the print size and they can't do it through PDF. So can we have some assurance that this will happen?
Well, I suspect that Disability Advisory Group would be all over us in terms of getting this work done. Aaron?
Yeah, we'll look at doing that, so we'll take that on board and we'll work on it, definitely.
Thank you. And the final thing was just there were some changes, good changes to the strategic assets section, including a change to the wording and acknowledging that key strategic assets include the ports of Auckland and the Auckland International Airport, that we are making and have made no decisions about those, and if we do, there will be public consultation. So that will be written in so that people know exactly what it is we are doing or not doing.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep, Councillor Ross.
Probably one thing that sticks out to me is a bit strange in this whole documentation and what we're consulting on is the actual rate increase, which we have down here, and it's not really clear that that's the LTP increase, 3.2. It is in there, but it's not really jumping out to say. But that also happens to be the mayoral proposal, 3.2 as well. Yet in the background we have hovering, including the mayor himself, signalling, I'd like to get it down to 2.8 or whatever, 2.5 maybe. Councillor Casey and myself clearly proposed 2.5, and that seemed to... So it seems around this table that no one really has the intention of bringing in a rate rise of 3.2, and indeed, there might be a majority around here that are drifting to 2.5, and then there'll be some others that will no doubt table at the right time. I'm looking at Councillor Quack's, 1% or something like that, which all within our rights to do. Yet we're going out to consult on 3.2 when in reality we have no intention of putting it in.
Yeah, but that's...
The way I read the mood of the council here, as I say, I think certainly everyone thinks we can get to 2.5 as a general rate increase. So it seems a little bit of a elephant in the room. So,
But to be fair, we didn't actually, even though it's pretty clearly indicated in my Merrill proposal and what we agreed generally, but we haven't specifically said we will have a 2.5% rate increase. Ultimately,
I'm aware of that.
ultimately that's what I would end up moving, on the basis that the next 3 or 4 months can justify that through our analysis of the balance sheet. And as I indicated to you, I wasn't going to go for significant changes in terms of reduction in costs or operational costs or anything like that. We've been through that with the LTP. So, Councillor Ross, the sentiment is there, but we haven't actually backed it with a resolution. So we concluded the draft, and so what the officers have done is in fact correct. Now, you could put some right in there indicating that the council is generally looking to reduce, but without a specific recommendation, you have to actually go with the LTP.
I understand that, but I'm just talking about, it seems like a bit of an anomaly. We're sitting there with
Yeah, I know.
everyone having
I
the
agree.
intent. So whether something can be put in there about 2.5, because, as I say, certainly you signalled it, Councillor Casey and myself signalled it with some other support. So, yeah, whether we can put anything in there to say that we're considering tightening the screws a bit, or...
So, if I can respond through you, Your Worship. So, on page something early, we've signalled that intent. So we've referenced where year 2 of the LTP sat in terms of an overall average general rate increase of 3.2, and we've captured the spirit of the mayoral direction through the proposal in terms of working away at our budgets and seeing if we can trim that at an overall average. I would encourage you to understand that we have not presented that to you yet, and we think you would be jumping the gun. We have an important budget refresh process to go through. There is plenty of pressure all over the business, and I think come April, May, you are going to have some tough decisions to make in regards to balancing the budget. So we think we've got this about right. We're letting people know where the LTP number sat. We're letting folk know through mayoral direction that there's some interest in trying to trim the cloth down a little bit further. But I think we're being realistic with yourselves and the community around how the consultation document positions that. I think we've got it at about the right level. And Councillor Clow, I mean, as you know, yes, at the risk of confusion here, it could well be your policy settings in regards to the interim transport levy in particular that determine for different segments of the community, business versus residential, where that headline number might end up. But in terms of the overall average number at 3.2, that's a really fundamental anchor to your budgets. They're big budgets, and you've yet to receive advice from us on how we think that's looking. We're going to work it really hard. You've given us direction. But we're not there yet. We're not ready. Right, Councillor Sharon.
Yeah, just on the understanding of the Auckland's growth and how we're going to pay for it. I know half the money's coming from central government, half the money's coming from the ratepayers. When I've asked about, so we're going to borrow money. We're also going to try and get money from selling assets. Well, a lot of our assets are actually assets that we are actually infrastructure, and we can't sell. So very concerned, because all this borrowing, at the end of the day, we're going to borrow money, but somebody has to pay for it, and that's going to be the ratepayers. Now, just thinking about the CRL, and just thinking about what Councillor Walker was just talking about, right? The funding's going to be that we're going to be borrowing for is going to be for the CRL. Haven't got a problem with intensification in the right areas. I think along the rail corridor, at the moment we're looking at intensification in a lot of leafy suburbs, which are very attractive to people that live in New Zealand and Auckland, people coming to visit, wanting to come and live here. So I just want to put that on the table. I think we have to be really, really concerned about the borrowing and which assets we're going to try and sell, because most of our assets, when you really look at them, most of our assets are actually infrastructure and things that we need to run this city. Thank you.
It's absolutely right. Councillor Wayne.
Just want to take the issue further that Kathy Casey raised about accessibility of information and the absolute imperative of having this information in HTML. What we're dealing with is information that is essentially words and numbers. If you've got the numbers in HTML, anybody can crunch the numbers. They can produce their own graphs. They can dig down. You can't do that with PDF information. So it's impossible for anybody to actually work with it. As far as the words are concerned, if you've got the words in HTML, not only does that it make it easy for the deaf community to transpose it into their language, it also means that anybody in our super diverse community can go through Google or the like and translate the language so that they can see that language in written form, and they can even, through programs, verbalise it. So we are discriminating, frankly, against a huge number of Aucklanders who increasingly have difficulty with the information that we're providing. And we are falling further and further behind other cities that are actively communicating much better with their citizenry. So this is something that we can do. It's incredibly simple. We just have to have the political will to do it. It could be done tomorrow. So why not?
Very good. And I think you've heard the undertaking from the officers, Councillor Wayne. Councillor Christie.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, I just want to refer to motion D is put there in support of the Tupunga Maunga operational plan, and Councillor Fletcher can't be with us, but I think I can speak on behalf of Councillor Bill Cashmore as well. Just to point out that there is no extra money being sought there. It's the LTP just carried through, and with a little bit of reprioritisation, and the reprioritisation has got an emphasis on the authority generating more income and saving on some of its operational budgets into the future. So we're reallocating $150,000 into the direction of the Info Centre fit out on Maunga Whao, 25k for some responding to some building inspection reports. We want to make sure that we can get tenants into those buildings and get more revenue. That's a priority for the Maunga Authority. There's some dangerous pines that we need to take down on One Maunga. We've got some vacant buildings, and we want to investigate how we get better tenancies there. Michael King Writers Centre, we've got some issues there, $70,000. But overall, it's about bringing the blowtorch to creating new revenues as quickly as possible, so that going forward, the next LTP, we are less reliant on the ratepayer contribution and more self-reliant. So I commend support of D.
Right, now just, Councillor George.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I've got a couple of issues or points. Firstly, on page 5, it's in relation to background. Yesterday the issue was we asked EY, and actually I looked at that section in more detail since, and I find it a bit underwhelming. I thought that when we passed the motion in relation to this, when we did the long-term plan, we were going to get these reports done post-haste so that we could use the material we gleaned to put it into the next annual plan. But it seems that we're now, it's going into the abyss. And, well, you know, it doesn't tell people very much. It was done for alternative funding, but we're talking about making the most of our assets. I thought it was to look at alternative funding, and I can think of things like shared services, which would be very apt, and I don't think, you know, it would be too difficult to bring in as a council, which could save us considerable money. Dealing with the assets, I mean, Councillor Casey's talking about strategic assets. Well, it's not just strategic assets, there's other assets as well. So I'm just disappointed with that. We paid 490,000 for those two reports, done at pretty fast speed, and I don't see that we're going to get the benefits from it. And the link to those reports there is pretty detailed, and I just wonder if you could have a hyperlink to go to each of the reports. You know, especially if it's electronic, it would be easier to find with a link there. And I just wonder about some of the wording there. I think we should actually be saying that it was done in relation to assets, but also seeking alternative funding to take the pressure off rates. So is that possible that we could do a bit of wordsmithing there as well to put the true reason for the reports into the document? And the other one which I raised yesterday is that page 14, paying for this investment. And we put a lot of store on our Standard & Poor's and Moody's credit ratings, but I just wonder that the last sentence there, this prudent approach to debt is a key reason why we have a AA Standard & Poor's rating, the highest in New Zealand apart from central government. Well, I think Councillor Quacks made the point yesterday, Mr Mayor, that it's because we're backed by the ratepayers who are going to have to fork out whatever we inflict on them as far as rates, and which they have to pay. So I think that sentence there could be like red rag to a bull. And I don't think it adds any value. It's mentioned about 4 times in the document, that particular aspect, and I think that sentence there, I don't know what it means, but I don't think it's helpful. I would like to see it removed, but that's obviously something I'd just like to hear what the answer to that is.
Right, Maddie, what do you think the answer to that is?
Yeah, we'll do. I'm not sure the question, really.
Yeah.
Well, isn't the? I'm just saying that report. You know, we crow about this AA rating, but the AA rating is based on the fact that we are backed by the ratepayers, who are our guarantors. So,
well, I mean, Councillor, there's a whole raft of issues that contribute to the credit rating we've got. We could write a book on it. The fact of the matter is the council's rated AA. That's extremely high quality. We're well regarded by investors, and it's bloody important that we remain so.
Well, I'm just pointing out.
What do you think?
I'm just pointing out the alternative view.
Yeah, Councillor George,
we
of course welcome alternative views on all matters. So how important is a AA rating for us, really, do you think?
Mr Mayor, it's extremely important. We've had this conversation several times in this chamber. It is important, and Councillor Wood, the AA rating is supported by a number of factors, as Matt has just said. One of those is the prudent approach to financial management, and as I've also discussed in the chamber before, our debt to asset ratio maintained at 16% is extremely low. That is well within LGFA guidelines, is one point. The second point that underpins that, as Matt has said, there are numerous things. If you look at, they look at also our track record, and what I mean by that is how we have managed our finances over a number of years. We're well within the, it's noted in the S&P and also in the Moody's reports about the quality of that work. We are regarded extremely highly, both in domestic issues and also in international issues. Those, every time we go to a bond issue, that rating is reconsidered. Our ratings, as you know, are reaffirmed by both agencies on an annual basis. So there are numerous aspects. The AA rating is very important in New Zealand for the fact that the only other entity that holds a rating higher than that is the Crown. The effect, if we have a lower rating, is that it reduces our ability to borrow and it increases our cost of borrowing. So perhaps I'll leave the explanation at that, Mr Mayor.
Okay, well, that's an explanation. I just have a slightly different call on that from the fact of what our debt levels are. I mean, this council started off with 3 billion debt in 2010, and we're heading up to 11.6 billion in 2025. You know, and I think, and it's always been my way of managing debt, is to try and minimise your debt levels, because it always puts pressure on your ability, the amount, especially the amount of interest you're paying. So it's. I
don't look like that. It's
Thank you, Councillor George.
Sorry,
Councillor Cal. No, right, Councillor Alf.
Thank you. Don't worry, Your Worship. You look frowned, and I just wanted to hear. It's like, oh my gosh, here we go. Your Worship, I mentioned this yesterday in regards to the UAGC. And somebody was going to get back to me, and it was interesting that there's nothing on here in regards to the map on number 9. I mentioned it in regards to the summary document because I just think that it's something that we need to put in there to get our community an idea, and that's on the map that goes to our ratepayers. Because Councillor Brewer mentioned the 650 UAGC, and you know, I think one of the points with that particular chart on page 9, if you have a look at it, we will end up having just over 134,000 ratepayers paying between 10% and over 20% increase in their rates as a result of the 650. So it's important that at least that gets put out to our community, because I know where those over 134,500 people or ratepayers are going to come from. And that's going to come from our lowest socio-economic wards. It's going to come from the ones that have lower value homes. So, you know, I just wanted to, so Aaron, you were going to come back to us, but I didn't see anything in here. So is this going to happen? I mean, I have no doubt at all that people will look at it, but I just wanted to sort of put that there as we have with the documents with the consultation document. So just really an answer in regards to, if that's going to happen, fine. If it's not, at least it'll be good to know why.
Yeah, so in terms of that, we were committed to sending around the summary document out this afternoon for you to review, and then we'll capture all that feedback when...
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor Alf, actually to cover that off, it may be that you would like to work under the item F as a working group of councillors. Councillor Denise, you raised the point before, so who's got final say, you know, who's finally going to sign it off? And I think myself and the chair would be having final say in terms of any bits and pieces of work that needs to be done, supporting information, or regard the summary as being supporting information. So I would have thought that any councillors who actually want to have some input at the back end of this, I'm sure you'll all have a say, but some who want to put a bit of extra effort in, now's the time to volunteer. I think that we can do no harm by having a small working group there if they feel particularly strongly about this issue. So, Councillor Alf, I think you would be useful.
Done and dusted.
And, sorry, done and dusted. And Councillor Denise?
Yep. Can I suggest that we have a couple of us indicate now, but we advertise the time that we will meet, and others can join if they wish? That's
fine. Okay, so are there any others who would like to be on part of this team? Councillor Bill, you look like it.
I've got enough to do.
Any others? You got enough to do?
Yep.
Right.
Wouldn't
Councillor
we
Penny?
Chair of Finance, yeah.
Good. And Ross is Deputy Chair?
Yes.
Good man. All right, so there's 4 in there. I think that's a good round number. Okay, team, well, we've had a good little discussion. What I propose to do is put it as a group. It's been moved and seconded. I'll move that. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Those against? Thank you very much. Councillors, that brings us to the conclusion of this meeting.
Wonderful.
We move onward and upward.